A pair of suicide bombers strike at the heart of Moscow's subway system, one of the busiest in the world. At least 38 people were killed in what appear to be coordinated attacks at two separate subway stations. The suicide bombers were women, and Russian police believe they were linked to the Islamic insurgent groups in the Caucasus. Prime Minister Vladimir Putin is vowing revenge, promising to track down and kill the plotters. The bombings are the first to target Moscow in 6 years, but Russians have been dealing with terrorism and the rise of Islamic militants for most of the last decade. For more now, we're joined by Stephen Cohen, professor of Russian studies at NYU and the author of the book Soviet Fates and Lost Alternatives. Mr. Cohen, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Bianca.
Let's start with this. These bombings Monday in subway stations in Moscow, were these in retaliation for the killings of several Islamic militant leaders in the Caucasus?
It's possible because this war between Moscow and the terrorists in the Caucasus has been going on a long time, and it's a vicious cycle, and nobody knows who began it and who's going to end it. But remember that in November, probably people related to these people blew up a train that was running from Moscow to St. Petersburg, a very high priority target. So this is part of a campaign to show the Russian government that the people, the resistance, the terrorists, whatever you want to call them, in the North Caucasus, that part of Russia in the south, can reach right into Moscow, right to the very, very center, because that's like Times Square where they hit.
Moving it right into there in the center. And when you look at these targets, two different subway stations, were these picked at random, or was there a big significance between these targets?
To me, one had enormous significance because it's in the neighborhood where I've lived many years in Moscow when I'm there, and I use that subway all the time. The other is underneath the intelligence or secret police headquarters at the Lubyanka building. Some people think they purposely chose that to show that they could go right to the heart or the nerve center of Russian security. But the larger meaning is that they brought this war back to Moscow, and this is going to impact on power in Moscow. It's going to impact on the way Moscow looks at the world, maybe even American-Russian relations. It's certainly going to influence the way ordinary Russians look at their government, because until today or yesterday morning, most of my Russian friends now felt safe. They don't feel safe today. It's a very big event. It's not like our 9/11, but Russia has had a whole bunch of small 9/11s, and this is another one.
You mentioned in there the relationship between the U.S. and Russia. How will this be affected now, especially when we recently negotiated an arms deal?
It won't affect that, but now I have to editorialize. It seems to me that it puts things in perspective, and that Washington has to decide what its real priorities with Moscow are. Is the real priority to expand NATO further and further toward Russia and aggravate the Kremlin to the point that we don't cooperate? Or is it this international terrorism, which has hit us, which has hit them, which could strike again? Above all, Russia and the United States are on the front line of this war against global terrorism. We need a partnership with Russia. Seems to me that's the priority, but how Washington sees it, I'm not sure.
What do you expect Russia's response to be? It's said that Moscow unlikely will not strike back against rebels with the bombing campaigns that we saw back in the 1990s.
There's divided opinion, and we saw it yesterday, or today, whatever time it is, 8 hours later in Moscow. President Medvedev said we must strike back, but we must observe everybody's civil liberties. That's the soft line. Putin said what he said when this happened in 1999, we'll track these people down wherever they are, even in their outhouse, he likes to say that, and we'll kill them. So Putin, you can hear the two approaches. One is nothing but the fist. The other is a more civil libertarian approach. But look, we had that debate since 9/11 in this country. We're still having it. Did we overdo it in our response to terrorism? Obama says he wants to restore civil liberties. Other people say we can't afford to do it. That debate's going on in Moscow, too. Of course, they have less civil liberties there, but it's an issue.
Okay, a lot to watch in these coming days.
None of it good.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Stephen Cohen. Thank you so much again for being with us this evening.